All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Improvly Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Dana Gowan. I'm so excited that you're here and joining us today. We have a fantastic episode and a super fun guest and story to talk about today with this guest. I can't wait to jump into it. This episode will have a little bit of everything: improv, public health, and a creativity focus to it. I've mentioned this in other episodes, but I have my master's of public health. And today we have on someone with their Ph.D. in public health and epidemiology. So I'm just so excited to jump in and talk about all of this. If you're new and joining for the first time, let me give you a rundown of what this podcast is all about. The goals of this podcast are 1, to help people understand the benefits of improvisation; 2, to demonstrate how improv shows up in all aspects of life; and 3, to inspire people to try new things, get out of their heads and judgment zones, and find creative outlets and passions that can help them. And our guest today is an experienced speaker, researcher, leader, and adventure and creativity seeker. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our amazing and fabulous guest, Dr. Jana Hirsch. Jana is an associate research professor in the Urban Health Collaborative and Department of Epidemiology at Drexel University Dornsife School of Public Health. Their research aims to understand the way neighborhoods shape health behaviors and disparities, and their current work includes longitudinal examinations of the way neighborhoods change and the impact that this change has on our health. It's very intriguing research. Jana has her undergraduate and master's degrees from the University of Pennsylvania and her PhD in epidemiological science from the University of Michigan. She has given many presentations at conferences and professional associations, and she currently teaches a class on interprofessional collaboration in urban health at Drexel University. As an improviser, Jana started at DSI Comedy in Chapel Hill. May it rest in peace now. And now she performs with Endgames Improv in San Francisco. You can find their Saturday show. This group performs on Friday and Saturday. Jana performs on Saturday with the show Your Fucked Up Relationship at Endgames Improv every Friday and Saturday at 9 p.m. So if you're in the San Francisco area, go check that show out. Sounds very intriguing already just by the title. Their bio says that they are an eager, active walker and a people-focused urbanophile. We'll find out what that means in a second. Please welcome the compelling, engaging, and most inspiring Jana Hirsch. Welcome, Jana. Yay!
Yeah. Thank you, Dana. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
I am too. I wanted to do your bio justice because you've worked so hard at it, and of course you've earned it. But I've got to tell you, when we talk, we get so fun and laughy, and I'm like, I got to be serious when I give this introduction of you.
I appreciate the levity. I think there's nothing funnier than a PhD, is what I was always told.
What? First off, Jana, we'll get into all the things, but you have to tell us, what is an urbanophile?
Yeah, it's pretty funny because I think I found this word a long time ago and I added it to my bio. Maybe I was like brand new, maybe even just postdoc. This is maybe 15 years ago. And it's a term that means that you love cities at its base. And for me, I think what it comes down to is that I do feel that I have a personal connection to place and to different cities and the way that we structure them and the way that I engage with them. When I show up in a new city, I do feel like I'm like, not on a date, but like meeting a new place in a really exciting way. So I do love cities. I do also love nature, but I have devoted a large chunk of my life so far to studying cities. And I'm always happy and excited to see a city I have previously been in or a brand new one.
I love it. That's a fantastic term. And I love that it has stayed on your bio. I think it's a happy accident that it stayed on there because it's an intriguing term. So people want to know more about what that is. It seems very fitting to your work and research too.
Yeah. The basic benefit that I see is that every time someone tries to introduce me, they can't pronounce that word.
Right.
That alone is worth the humor of it.
Exactly. And I've got to tell our listeners a little bit about how we met. We have quite a few connections here. Jana and I met at Camp Improv Utopia, Camp West, in May 2023, which is in Cambria, California. This was Memorial Day weekend this year, and we happened to be in the same cabin, the Van Gogh cabin, which we tried to pronounce Van Gogh or Van Gogh. Our head counselor didn't really like that phrasing, even though we liked it. So we just kept saying Van Gogh the whole weekend. And we discovered that we have a few things in common. One, we both work in public health. I have my MPH and Jana has her PhD in epidemiology. And two, we both have a South Carolina connection. So I studied at the University of South Carolina, graduated in 2010 and 2013 with my master's, and Jana taught at the University of South Carolina in 2016, 2017 timeframe. So Jana, we lived in Columbia, South Carolina, and we just missed each other. Our paths never crossed, unfortunately.
Which is pretty impressive because it's a very small town. I mean, it's not very small for South Carolina, but it's not a big place. It's not like living in San Francisco at the same time. And I don't know if you remember, but the other thing is there was an improv show in there was this like underground, very tiny improv scene at this bar, and we did it in the back room. And I had just moved from North Carolina, where I had been watching and taking improv classes consistently, but had never performed. And I went to watch this improv, and it was like maybe 5 people who just chilled. I think they did it maybe once a quarter or once a month. This amazing person in South Carolina who probably still lives there named Topher organized this. And so, if you and I had been there, maybe we definitely would have noticed each other. There were almost no female improvisers, but I think neither of us probably were performing at that time.
Well, yeah, and I didn't start my improv journey until 2020, but I had looked at classes. I wanted to get improv classes for my husband because he's very funny and jokey, and I was like, this would be perfect for us to do together. And I could never find anything in Columbia. And it's interesting to know that there's an underground scene that I could not find online, I guess.
Yeah, there was not a theater and there were no classes, but there was like a group of people who would do improv, just like perform sporadically. And I think I found it on a flyer on the door of a bar. I don't know, because I'm the way that I engage with cities of just like walking every possible inch and looking at every single, turning over every rock and looking at every single flyer. I somehow found that.
That's so funny. Well, I like to think our paths crossed in a park or at a race or something, and we just didn't realize it. But it's awesome that our paths have crossed now, and we're public health friends and improv friends now, which is great.
Yeah. I just remembered where it was. It was at, do you remember Art Bar?
I remember the name. I wonder if our Columbia fans can remember where that is.
Yeah, our Columbia fans can tell us if they're still doing any comedy of any type at Art Bar. I think I'm looking at it right now. They have some open mic comedy. I think probably more stand-up and improv, but Columbia fans, go to Art Bar.
I know I have a few Columbia fans. So yeah, go check it out and let us know how it is. Well, and I know we want to get to the story of the mysterious notebook of creativity. But first, I have to nerd out with you, Jana, about public health, public speaking, and improv a little bit before we get to the cool story. My question for you is, what made you want to study public health and environmental health in the first place?
Yeah, it's a longer story than I want to give time to in this podcast, but I'll give you the cliff notes. And I also want to say that I do always believe that our stories sound linear in hindsight. I always think we're able to like look backwards and be like, oh, well, it was this, and then that turned into this, and that turned into that, and it was an obvious path. And that narrative often is pretty detrimental, I think, to our young adults or even our like anyone at any age who wants to do something or try something where they don't know how it's going to turn out or they don't know what it's going to serve, because we think that it's this linear path because other people articulate theirs in this linear way. When I was in college, when I was in high school, I was doing science research, and I chose to do geologic oceanography for a few reasons. The first and most important of which, I think, was that I was this high school kid and I was interested in science research, and we were supposed to do a science research project with the local university that summer, and everyone else was getting lab jobs and the geologic oceanography job was on the beach. So who was going to say no to that? And also, I think I have always been more drawn to the kind of earth sciences than some of the more basic lab sciences. So I took this job. And then when I got to college, I wanted a summer job, and the geology department was hiring for soil science researchers. So I dug square holes in Wisconsin for the summer. And through this, started realizing like, oh, maybe I want to work in community gardens. So then it kind of all fell into place when I came back to Philadelphia that fall. I started working in urban community gardens, got really involved with nutrition environments and food environment and inequities. And at the same time, I had paid a lot of attention, the way that I always have, to place and where I am and kind of the spatial patterning of things. And it was kind of one thing after another. And I ended up transitioning my research to be around the way that our neighborhoods are designed and the resources that are available to different people, and then the subsequent impact of that on health inequities. I will also say that my dad is an emergency room physician. And so growing up, I got to see the failing of our medical system, or the failing in preventative health, constantly. My dad is the main person there when everything has gone wrong. And I think from a systemic standpoint, it was really easy, even at a young age, for me to see that like there are things our society could do to make it that people can live healthier lives at a baseline and not end up in the ER. So that's the shortest version, and it sounds very linear, but it did not feel linear at the time. And even now, I don't necessarily know that I feel, it's never a direct path.
I love that point that in hindsight, we're always like, well, yeah, then this happened and it was a linear path. But when you're going through it, you don't really know what the outcome's going to be. And you're like, okay, I'm influenced by this and I want to try this. And so then you follow what you're interested in, and look where it's led you now to doing all this amazing research on the built environment and health disparities. And I imagine that non-public health people don't think about this often, but we certainly do. You certainly do, maybe more than anyone around. But can you tell us, how does the built environment shape our health behaviors?
It's relatively easy for us to at least think about our own lives
Mhm.
and the way that we engage with our neighbors, our environments, what access we have to grocery stores or places that we can walk or places that we can go to calm our mind. So at least at the basic level, I think it's something that's pretty easy for us to grasp, that the places that we live, work, play all impact our behaviors and the choices that we have to make. So it constrains and supports the decisions that we make. And you are an individual who gets to make those decisions within that construct, but it's only within the available amenities to you. And then, there are obviously different levels of that may or may not be as easy to understand as an individual walking around. So some of those things might be, the land use planning process that goes into why things are in different places, or the historic context that has led to race-based residential segregation and redlining and all of these other pieces. But I do think on its basic foundational level, it's very easy for us to see in our own lives. And I think for many people, what might be helpful to think about when you think about your neighborhoods is like, how did that shift when the pandemic happened and suddenly your movement was constrained, or the environments that you were interacting with were constrained, or the way that you were able to interact with your neighbors was shifted because of where you could or could not go, or how you were going to go to those places. And all of that, I think, is a pretty good example to show you, where our geography and our places and our context intersect with our behavior.
That's the very high level overview of it. And I know you dive deeper into that, but it is so important. And I always think about it more in physical activity, in terms of physical activity, in the sense of if there are sidewalks, people are more apt to walk, or it's easier, there's accessibility to walk. But on the grand scheme of things, how neighborhoods are built in different systems and racial disparities and such, that all impacts people. And if you live in a food desert where you don't have access to healthy foods and produce and vegetables, then the only option you have is to go for the fast food options that are quite heavily marketed to you, because that's all you have access to. So it's a whole system in play, and it's crazy that we've let it get to this point. But I know that might be a conversation for another day.
Yeah, I would say the other thing that maybe if people are interested in this, there's a movement called the 8 to 80 cities. And I believe it was started by Gil Peñalosa. And it's this concept that if you are thinking of a neighborhood and it would be good for your 8-year-old child or your 8-year-old niece or an 8-year-old in your life or your 80-year-old parents or grandparents or neighbor, then that's going to be a good neighborhood for quality of life and health and life expectancy. And I think that, listeners can't see what I look like. I am a able-bodied, middle to younger adult white female. So I have, privileges of moving through space and place in a particular way, but that's not also what we want to design our cities for. We want to design them to really be healthy spaces for everybody of all ages and of any background.
It's amazing work. And if I'm not in public health, I'm probably not thinking about these things. So it's amazing and wonderful that you're bringing these research studies to life and to light too, for people to understand the importance of urban planning and the use of green spaces and so much more that goes into it. And you're currently doing a longitudinal study right now. What is that all about?
So in public health, especially, when it comes to these sorts of questions, we can't do things like randomized controlled trials. We can't say like, oh, now
Right.
we're going to send you to live in one neighborhood and you're going to, and this other person's going to go live in a different neighborhood. And so the field instead needs to leverage these large scale observational studies. And what that means is we basically choose a group of people. So the people that I've worked in the multi-ethnic study of atherosclerosis, or MESA. I've worked in that cohort since 2010, so I guess for 13 years now. And they're a cohort of 6,814 middle-aged and older adults who were recruited from 6 different cities across the United States in 2000. So they've been followed for 23 years now. They're currently coming in for their 7th visit. So they've come in for 6 visits so far, and they do these really intensive, sometimes 1-day, sometimes 2-day visits. And then we collect a whole host of information from them about their lives, about their families, about their neighborhoods. I am the principal investigator, or PI, of the Mesa Neighborhood Study right now. And this version of the Mesa Neighborhood Study, this is the 3rd iteration of it. So it's the component that asks them questions about their neighborhoods. So it asks them about all the resources that are around, about the way that their neighborhood has shifted over time, about the way that they interact with their neighbors, about just every possible detail. And this is the 3rd time they're being asked these questions. They were asked these questions in 2003, 2005, and then again in 2010 to 2012, and now again, another 10 years later. So we get to see this really beautiful arc and picture of their neighborhoods and see how their neighborhoods at one point in time maybe impact their behaviors or their health outcomes now. This version of the Mesa Neighborhood Study focuses on aging and has an emphasis on understanding the ways that neighborhoods can impact Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline, as well as racial and socioeconomic disparities in cognitive outcomes. And these participants are unique because many cohort studies only collected information from non-Hispanic white participants, or only non-Hispanic white and non-Hispanic Black. The Mesa cohort has non-Hispanic white, non-Hispanic Black, Hispanic participants who come from 2 ethnic backgrounds, Mexican and Puerto Rican, and Chinese participants. And they were recruited, as I said, from 6 cities. So they came from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Baltimore, Maryland, New York City, Chicago, Minneapolis, and Los Angeles. So they come from all over the country, and they've now moved to
wow.
Yeah. They've now moved to like more than 40 states across the United States, because we track them and they move around.
Right.
So now my team creates data using geographic information systems for the whole US so that we can link it to whatever addresses that these people have lived in over time. And many of them are getting up there in age, and we get to watch that transition as they age and navigate new spaces or decide to move out of their neighborhoods or stay in their neighborhoods, and the way that neighborhoods play into that.
This is so fascinating. And I know you talk about this all the time, but I've been out of the public health field, or I've been out of the public health world, I would say like community health world, for about 10 years. Grad school, I graduated 10 years ago. And so I don't often hear about these kind of workings or like the research studies out there. This is fascinating on so many levels too, just like the idea that people are moving and like how do they embrace their new environment as they're getting older and as they're moving and how it relates to their health and their brain health. I mean, it's incredible just you started with 6 cities and now people just inherently move around and now you've got all these other cities. That's so cool.
And the other amazing thing to me is like, I think it's easy when you have almost 7,000 people to not see the people side of it. But these are people who are giving up time for 23
Yeah.
years now. They have come in order for them to be in the study, they still have to go to the research centers at those 6 cities. So even if they've moved, like some of these participants are traveling to be part of the study because they believe in it. And this study has produced some of the most important research when it comes to cardiovascular health and cardiovascular health disparities, because this cohort allows us to understand and see different measures of cardiovascular risk for populations that previously weren't studied. And so when you go to the doctor and they'll tell you things like, you know, what a threshold blood pressure might be, or
Mhm.
what a threshold for, I mean, I'm not a physician. This is about to become very clear that I'm not a physician, but like when they look at like coronary artery calcium or something, right? That, very clinical measure, the way that we know whether you fall within a normal distribution and how that progresses over time and whether that's going to lead to stroke or heart attack is through these large cohorts. And so it's really important to have a diversity of participants, both spatially across the entire US and in terms of racial and ethnic composition, not just for, I think a lot of people think of that in terms of the genetic side, but actually I think more importantly for the structural side that, your experience in the United States would be different if you are coded by the outside world as one race versus the other.
Amazing. I mean, there's so many practical applications of research. And I know when I'm in grad school reading of these, I'm like, oh, this 14, 15-page research study that I'm having a hard time getting through. But it really is important work. And kind of knowing the flip side of things and knowing all that goes into it and like 20 plus year study and having to follow and track these people and keep up with them. It's amazing work that you're doing. And yeah, thank you, Jana, for spearheading this and being a part of it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm just a part of it. There are thousands of MESA researchers and the coordinating
Yeah,
center is at University of Washington. And what's impressive that maybe people don't realize is like, this is one cohort. There are dozens of these national cohorts in the
right.
United States that help us to get estimates and understand population health in order to come up with answers about these questions that may not be as easy to answer with a randomized control trial, easy or ethical to answer with a randomized control trial or something that is more quote unquote bench science in terms of assigning people to some sort of exposure.
Well, you clearly talk about your research very well and helping maybe the lay non-public health person understand what your research is about. And I mean, you teach classes, you've given hundreds of presentations at conferences. Did you always like public speaking or have you had to learn to love it? What's your public speaking journey been like?
Yeah, I actually have never been asked this. It's an interesting question. I guess I can answer the first part easily, which is that I love speaking in front of people. I get a lot of joy from it. I would say sometimes I'm more nervous speaking one-on-one with someone. And the question of whether or not I've always been this way, I don't know. I did so I was in 4-H, which is, for those who don't know, is the like co-ed
Yes. Nice.
non-military scouts, essentially.
Oh, okay,
4-H
cool.
is like for little kids and for high school kids. It's not all little kids. It stands for head, heart, hands, health. And
Oh,
it's often in rural areas, but I didn't grow up in a rural area. And it has really interesting skills. But one of the things that you do every year is you actually do a presentation. It's like a demonstration or a presentation. And so I started doing those when I was about 6, 7 years old, every
wow.
year.
Nice.
And I would usually do it as a demonstration, usually a food demonstration. Like I loved cooking and I've always just naturally kind of done that. And there are pseudo competitions and I like went to states one year. So I guess I did learn presenting skills potentially in that, but I don't remember being nervous about those presentations either. I have generally really loved that reaction of people, that energy that comes off of a crowd. If you're really engaging with them and you're focused on putting that energy out towards them rather than like thinking about yourself. And so I think sometimes the one-on-one conversations can feel harder for me because the balance of what proportion of the conversation I take up feels larger, even though, in a presentation, I might be the main one speaking. That engagement is like the 10 or 20 or 50 or 200 people, their energy and being able to see and kind of those micro interactions with them feels more about them than sometimes in a one-on-one conversation. So yeah, I've been giving presentations a long time.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And again, it's not a linear journey always. And so all that experience helped you and just being a great presenter, not even really thinking about it, like being nervous or anything. You're like, this is just a thing I do. I've done it since I was 6 or 7, talking about all these 4-H things that I've been doing and doing cooking demonstrations. That's amazing. And how was it teaching classes and being a facilitator and instructor
Yeah,
in classes?
I love that you use the word facilitator. I think in a teaching setting, I am always happiest if I feel more like a facilitator than
Mm.
a teacher. I think it's easy to like the feeling of like, I have the answer.
I know all things.
Yeah. And it maybe feels safer, right? Because you know how that conversation is going to go. There's no uncertainty in that type of teaching. You're going to tell them the answers. You're going to walk them through it. You can feel really prepared. You can really like know exactly. You might even write out what you're going to say, which I've never done, but I'm sure people do. And that might be true, but it doesn't, to me, feel that good or authentic to be like, I have the answer. And often in our field, there isn't an answer. I mean, for epidemiologic methods, there are definitely right and wrong ways to calculate things.
Right.
But even that, it's not I have the answer. I'm just going to rotely move through this and someone will move through it in the same way or will understand it in that way. So if I can be a facilitator, that's ideal. I will say I have transitioned during the pandemic to teaching remote and I don't like it as much. I mean, I teach fully asynchronously remote and I lose a lot from that. I lose a lot of the real time, the reaction, seeing what's going on with that person and being able to pivot in the moment or what's going on with that group of people and tailoring it to what makes sense. All of that is gone in that setting or is just in a slower state. Maybe it's like they're writing in their discussion board. So that has been a totally different experience for me.
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely create connection online in virtual settings and presentations. It is harder and more difficult. And I don't think you leave feeling all those good feelings of connection as you do if you're in person. And yeah,
Yeah.
you can see people's reactions. Oftentimes there's a lot more
Yes.
distractions too when we're online. If you're not giving your present focus,
Yep.
yeah, it's hard. But you also probably reach more people and reach them where they're at if they're doing it
Yes.
online and it's more accessible for them. So there are benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I teach asynchronously online. So I don't even see my students like in a Zoom
Oh,
setting.
right,
And I
right.
think, that has all of these downsides, but you're absolutely right. The positive of this is like, people who are getting their degree at night while they work, or they just want the flexibility to live their lives. They don't need something else competing for their time. They just want flexibility to learn when they want to learn. And I think that that's really valuable. So there are benefits and detriments to both sides of this.
And then improv. So you said you started improv in North Carolina when you were working there. So what made you want to start taking improv classes since you were already great at public speaking? What brought on this improv want?
Actually, it's really funny because I came to improv because of running. So I will preface this by saying when I was in high school, I did go to watch some improv shows at the local
Okay.
theater and I did love watching. It
Yeah.
was all short form and it was games and I just thought it was brilliant. And I did always love Whose Line Is It Anyway? So I liked watching improv a lot. I moved to North Carolina as a postdoc and around the same time, I decided I would try to get myself to like running. And to do this, because I hated running, to do this, I decided I would run every day for a month. Just 5 minutes a day was my decision. And so
Oh.
I started and I ran 5 minutes a day every day for a month. And at the end of the month, I still didn't like running. So I said, okay, I'll do it for another month because they say actually habits take, whatever number of weeks. And my goal was to make it be just like something else I did. And that was in the summer, right before I moved to North Carolina. Fast forward, I moved to North Carolina and I'm still running every day. And at this point, I actually didn't hate it, which I think was
Okay.
a win. I was like, yeah, that was what I wanted. I don't hate it. And I was walking back and forth to work and realized that because of how I engage with cities and constantly like poking in every nook, there was a comedy theater there named DSI, and they did improv shows. And I walked past one day and they also had a run club one of the days.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And their policy was that if you came and you ran with the run club, you could stay for the show for free. And I'm this like, I just came out of a grad degree. I'm a postdoc. And I was like, oh, yeah, I love improv anyway. I love watching improv. And I had never seen long form before. And that theater was mostly long form. But I was like, and this is great. I'll run with them. That'll be instead of running alone. And so I showed up and I ran that day and watched the show. And while I like being an improviser, I will say I pride myself on being like the number one improv audience member. I am
yes.
I will give you so much back. Like I will give you all of the laughs, the eye contact, the like exclamations, the presence. Like I am here for it. I love improv. Even the worst improv, I love. And I guess it showed that day. And they told me like, you can come to any of our shows for free, which I had been living in like bigger cities. So I wasn't used to like this, this college town theater, which I think it was reasonable. They want an audience member.
You have to sit front and center in the first row. You must sit there. Just keep your laughter. You're a great audience member. We want you in the seats. Yeah, that's awesome.
And so it was this joke for a while that I was just the number one audience member. And so I would just stop by on my way home from work and see like a show probably almost every other day or every day of the week. Any day that they had a show, I would probably see one of their shows at least that night. I would hang out there. And people over time, they were like, you should do improv. And I was always like, no, I'm the number one audience member. I don't want to know how the sausage is made,
yeah, the magic of it, right? The mysteriousness.
Yeah, like I just want to be here and amp you guys up. And they pushed and pushed. And I even performed on stage for the 1-year anniversary of me running every day, because I've continued running every day.
Wow.
They had me perform on stage as the story for one of their long form shows. It was a long form show where like a guest would come and tell little stories. And so on. And it happened to be that it was on, I think, Fridays. And it happened to be that my 1-year anniversary of running every day was a Friday. And so I came and performed on stage for that. But I refused for a long time to take classes. Finally, they convinced me to take classes under the premise that I was like, well, I never have to perform, right? Like I'll just do it for fun.
That's how they get you. You never have to perform. You just got to take the classes.
Yeah. And so I did. I took the entire series with them and I only performed in my grad shows and I would do drop-ins and I loved the theater community there. There's actually, there's a new theater that grew out of a number of performers from that. It's in Durham for those listeners who might be there, called Meddlesome. And they are amazing improvisers. And I'll also just kick butt people. So if anyone's in that area, I highly recommend. And actually, I think the founder of Meddlesome, or one of the founders of Meddlesome, I don't know the exact organizational structure, is the person who started the Run Club at DSI. So she's great. And so over time, I just performed with them and I just loved doing it. It was so much fun. And it was less about the public speaking and performing and more just like, oh, this is great. People are actually going to like throw down and be present and be goofy and like, let's do this together. And it, thankfully, seeing how the sausage was made didn't ruin my improv watching ability. I will say, actually, to some degree, it made me more impressed with some of the really talented improvisers. When you know how the sausage is made, you're like, oh, wow, you make really good sausage. But yeah, and then I stopped for a while because I moved to South Carolina, and then I moved from South Carolina to Philadelphia with a stint in Vancouver, Canada in between. And the Philly improv scene is great, but, I think is a little bit more serious. It's a bigger city. So it's like, yeah, you have to audition or be in a more structured way. And so I didn't drop improv, but it wasn't part of my life then for a bit. I did teach improv at academic conferences twice in that period, which was super fun, like teaching improv to people who didn't necessarily want to learn improv and watching them connect in that way was really special. And then I found my way to the Bay and in some ways ended up staying in the Bay because of improv, which is a separate story that I'm happy to go into if you are interested.
Of course. So you started performing at End Games. Was that the first place that you took classes or like you started at in the Bay?
No. So I had a really, and we all had a really tumultuous 2020.
Yeah.
But I had
Mhm.
a particularly unique one. I was stuck outside the country for the first 8 months due to the pandemic. I was stuck on an island where it was actually like it's actually something that carries a lot more trauma than, people are like, that sounds lovely. And it was
Right.
also lovely, but it has
The
a lot of
uncertainty
complicated
of
pieces.
it, I'm sure. Yeah.
There's all sorts of pieces. But when I returned to the US, I sold my house in Philly and I just left. And I was moving around. And this was in early 2020. I had been vaccinated as a public health professional earlier than everybody else. And so I was just kind of impromptu moving around. And that was back when things were still pretty shut down.
Mhm.
And I had wandered my way to Santa Fe, and I had left a bunch of my stuff in Seattle when I had come back from this island because they had just returned me to the West Coast. And I went to see some friends and officiate their wedding. And so I'm a terrible driver. I'm like a very bad long distance driver. I'm not a terrible driver as in like will hit things. I'm a terrible
Okay.
driver as in like we'll drive 20 minutes and then be like, okay, we're done, right? Like,
Uh-huh. Do you get sleepy or
yeah,
bored?
I get sleepy and hungry and bored, all the things. Every possible way that you could be a bad long distance driver. I'm like, where's the game? What is going on? So my friends had actually been tag team driving me across the country. I had decided I was driving to Santa Fe, and I had only made it like if it was like 2.5 months, and I had only made it to like Asheville,
Wow. Oh
North
my god.
Carolina, or like Nashville, Tennessee. And so I'm so grateful I had friends who were like, cool, I'll fly into, like, one friend flew into Memphis and drove me to Oklahoma City where I celebrated my birthday. And then she flew out of Oklahoma City and someone else flew in to Oklahoma City for my birthday and then like drove me to Santa Fe. And then one of my friends from Seattle, the one who actually had all my stuff, flew to Phoenix to drive me to San Francisco because San Francisco was like an easy place for her to fly out of. And when I got to the Bay, it was right when everybody else's vaccines suddenly hit, where it suddenly became really difficult to find short-term Airbnbs. Like I had been used to like showing up in a city, finding an Airbnb and just booking it because I was one of the only ones who had been vaccinated and it was just easy. And I get to San Francisco and a 1-week Airbnb cost more than a 6-week sublease because everyone in San Francisco also suddenly was vaccinated and wanted to go see their families and friends and other things. So they were subleasing really cheap. So I was like, okay, I'll just, I'm not in a rush. Like, where am I going? I didn't have like a plan of where I was going. I was vaguely trying to get to Seattle, but like, okay, 6 weeks later is not a big deal. So I take this 6-week sublease. And then a week after I take this 6-week sublease, Leela, which is a theater in the Bay, started classes again of improv. And I saw an advertisement for it. And I was like, oh, I've had this horrible experience in the last few years. I feel disconnected. I feel emotionally out of touch with myself and others, like everything that everyone was feeling during the pandemic. And I loved improv and I want to go play with people. Sure. So I signed up, but it was a 6-week class. And I signed up a week after my 6-week sublease started. So it went a week past my 6-week sublease. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just get another sublease. So I found another 1-month sublease. And then that led to another month sublease and another month sublease. And now I have been in the Bay and now I live in a single place. Like I live in a community house that I moved into this January, but I stayed here month by month for a long time. And now I've been here since June 2021. So over 2 years. And you could say it was because of improv that I stopped and stayed.
You could say that because that's
Yeah. Yeah. I found Endgames because they have a really awesome jam and it's really welcoming. It's once a week. And the person who runs it, Cody, is just a great facilitator for that. And so I started going to the jam mostly just to have more time to play, but it was on stage. So I was like, oh, I guess I'm actually performing. And that I was really nervous about. Like, this is not what I wanted for my improv world. And I was like, that's my fun time that is not performing. And then auditions came around because they do auditions every 6 months for house teams. And the auditions were right before the jam. And I was like, cool, more jam time, basically, is what I thought. I don't know why I thought that. Auditions are not at all like just playing on stage with other
they're
people.
not.
Everyone's nervous. But that's how I auditioned and ended up on a host team and have performed with Endgames now for almost a year and a half.
Oh my god, that story, the, non-linear story that you can make linear now, but as you're going through it, you're like, "I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just being in the moment and loving going to play and hang out with people, and I'm just gonna stay in San Francisco and keep playing." And look at you now, you're a resident.
And even that, right, in hindsight, you could look back and be like, that sounds so easeful. And it wasn't, right? It's like this
Right.
constant tension of like, should I stay? Should I leave? Like when we're in the moment, nothing feels that way ever.
But I imagine taking the improv classes or just the jams and, like, playing sometimes, at least for me, improv helps with dealing with uncertainty a little bit more and having
Yeah.
space for more uncertainty, and also it gives you a break from the uncertainty, like
I was going to say, it just gives a break from whatever it is that you're thinking about because you're in that space and whatever it is like is on hold for a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's a really beautiful gift.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So many good stories.
So that's my broad improv journey.
An off and on journey, but now it's definitely on. It's on and it's shining brightly, that journey. I mean, you're going to improv camp. You're not just an audience member now. You are fully immersed in the improv world.
Yeah. But even improv camp, like I had signed up as a wait list and they just told me on improv camp started on
That's
like a Friday. They
right.
told me on Thursday.
That's impressive. My anxiety I don't know if I could handle that.
I think that improv and also like what I've gone through in the last few years have given me space to just sit in that and be like, that's what we're doing. And I've lost some of that really uncomfortable feeling of the uncertainty or something shifting quickly. I feel grateful to be able to kind of accept, that we don't have the ability to plan something as tightly as we want for the future. And even when we make those plans, they fall through all the time. And so it's allowed me to kind of take some of these amazing opportunities too when they fall into place, like going to improv camp.
Well, and I remember you would get up early too and go for a walk and enjoy the nature and the scenery. I would sleep in as close to breakfast as possible or sleep almost through breakfast, and you'd be up and then you'd come in and having done your 2-mile walk for the morning. And I'm like, oh, that's so impressive.
I am still running every day. So I would wake up to go on my run because I knew I didn't want to deal with running later in the day.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, Jana, thanks for indulging me in public health and public speaking and improv. We have a fun story too that I want to get to, and I know I've talked through all the other things and left this to the end as like a cliffhanger, but I do want to get into this mysterious notebook of creativity. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll talk about that when we come back. All right, and we're back with Jana Hirsch talking about all things public health, public speaking, improv. And this episode is focused on the mysterious notebook of creativity, and we have yet to talk about it. So let's get into it. And let me set the scene for our listeners here, and then Jana, please fill in the gaps and add to it. But Jana and I were talking about a month ago. We were just chatting post camp about public health and applied improv. And Jana told me about this notebook. And I was immediately like, oh my God, you have to come on the show and tell us about this notebook of creativity and tell this story. So let me set the stage. You and a friend went to this lady's house to pick up something that she was giving away on your local Buy Nothing group, which, if anyone doesn't know what Buy Nothing is, it's a really cool organization where you give gifts, things that you're trying to get rid of to help with recycling and reusing. Instead of it going to a landfill, it goes to someone who could use it and needs it and wants it. Jana was picking this up from the lady, and she invited you all in to her house to see what else she had that she was giving away. And
yeah, she was moving.
She was moving. Okay.
Yeah, she was moving. So she had a bunch of stuff that she had put aside for Buy Nothing. And I think the post had a lot of different items in it, but I had noticed this colander at our house. I had just moved into my new house, and our house didn't have a colander because the person who had moved out, whose room I was taking, it was her colander. And this colander was really hard to miss because it's a gold colander. It's like very ostentatious almost. So I noticed it immediately and was like, wait, we need a colander. So I wasn't surprised that she had other things to give away because she did have other stuff listed, I think, but I had ignored most of them. And so when we said we were there, she was like, yeah, come on up. And both of us like looked at each other because we kind of knew that we're not really the right people. Like
you will take all the things.
Yeah, we get excited about things and we would take them, but then later be like, we don't need any of this. And we both like keeping really neat homes and everything, but also love like finding different things. And this is my housemate and I. And
nice.
There were three other people in the house. And I would say that her and I are probably the most susceptible to that sort of like excitement obtaining of items. But we decided to go up anyway. Yeah.
Well, can you imagine if you didn't? Because you did. And on
We
this
did.
table, where she had a table of stuff. On this table was a notebook that immediately catches your attention. What did this notebook look like? Why did you want to take it?
Yeah, so we go upstairs to get the colander, and she has a whole bunch of different things on this table. And I immediately noticed this. It's a notebook journal. It's stunning. It's really, truly stunning. I have it here.
Describe it for those who aren't.
I was going to say, Dana can see it, but you can't. It's heavy, which none of you can see. And it's a handmade notebook it's definitely handmade, like hand stitched. It is leather bound, a really rich kind of honey colored brown leather with a strap that keeps it together. Like it has one of those side flaps that closes it in, and then has a lot of pages. It has 5 booklets that were hand sewn in to it. And it's just really beautiful. And it's soft. It's really soft leather. And I see it and I immediately think to myself, no, I don't need that because I don't actually journal. I have tried journaling so many times in my life and failed. Mm-hmm. And I've tried so many different types of journaling too. I've tried like, I'm going to draw a picture every day, or I'm going to try to journal in the morning, different times of day, or in a regimented structure of like, I'm going to journal for this amount of time, or I'm going to journal in third person or first person, or I've tried every possible thing. I'm like, I think it would be good to journal. And I'm not a journaler. I'm like an aspirational journaler. So I knew immediately that I did not need this. And I also was like, I just want to touch it. It's pretty. Like, I wanted to see how heavy it was. It is heavy, so I was like, and I pick it up and I'm holding it and it's like, it's soft. I'm kind of like rubbing the cover and we're talking to this woman. She's about my age, probably close to like 5 to 7 years younger than me. And she's telling us that she's moving, and we were just, talking to her. And while we're talking to her, my housemate's picking up other items, including like this roll of like sticky contact paper that makes rainbows for windows and stuff, like all these things we don't need, like we really don't need. There's like matching gold other things that we didn't need that we actually thankfully didn't take. But this conversation's continuing and I'm holding this notebook and my housemate shoots me this glance that clearly is like, we got to get out of here. Or we're going to take everything. Like, we need to go. And so I was like, well, like, thank you so much. And we left and I'm still holding it. So I took it.
Oh, wow.
And so I wasn't planning on taking this. I mean, if I had like thought through it, I would have definitely left it. And also, I had flipped through it. It has off-white pages. It's not like clean, crisp paper. It's like beautiful, aged, kind of sandy colored paper. And I had flipped through it and it was empty. And so we get to the car with the rainbow contact paper and the gold colander.
Yes.
And this diary and I think a few other items. And we run the rest of our errands. And then we come home and we go to the kitchen. We're sitting down, we're eating a snack, and we're talking to one of our other housemates. And he's like, what is all of this stuff? And I was like, yeah, look at this diary. I have lots of friends who do journal. So I was like, we'll find a use for it. I was like, he's holding it. I'm like, yeah, it's totally empty. And like, she was just giving it away. And it's beautiful. It's like the type of journal or diary that looks like it should have like your deepest secrets, or it looks like it should have
it does.
Your poetry or your song lyrics. Like, it's a really beautiful journal. It's not like a regular notebook. And as I'm saying, like, yeah, it's entirely empty. He goes, Jana, it's not empty. It has something written in it. And he shows me a page that has a list of goals to be completed. It says goals. I'm holding it. So let's see the exact wording. It says goals, end of summer, September 21st, not counting. I don't know what that means. It has like not counting with an asterisk. 142 days away from today, it says. And then it has a list of goals. So I took some notes. On the left side of the page, I wrote notes. It says Jana Notes. I found it on February 27th. And on February 27th, we were 206 days away from September 21st. So I knew that it wasn't this year's goals. These were some previous year's goals.
Okay.
I also wrote down notes that will make more sense in a second. But I said, what is flourish creation time? What is creative creation time? Should my workouts include my run? And then it says in bold letters, no. And here's the list of goals. So the goals say coaching certificate complete, 85 workouts, 100 hours of creative creation time, 40 hours of flourish creation time, 100 days alcohol free, 75 days weed free, new save influx $5,000.
Ooh.
10 initiated social engagements, 10 networking / professional connections, 100 meditations, and then this is really important because it's in a different pen. 20 recordings of a song is what it says. 20 recordings of a song, which will become important later when I'm sure you ask me how I'm doing on these goals. So those were the goals. And what was interesting is like, I'm a very regimented person when it comes to achieving things. I have a Ph.D. I need a giant research study. I know how to achieve goals. I help doctoral students set goals. I set goals for big projects. I have lots of personal goals. I set New Year's resolutions all throughout the year. I set them at the beginning of the year. I set them whenever I decide. I have decided at different points in time to run every day, and then I run every day. I will happily create and like structure. At the same time, I'm also very open to uncertainty and whimsy and what comes our way. And as you heard, like sometimes you just don't know. And my absolute gut immediate reaction when he said that it was not empty and he showed me this was like, these are my goals now. Like it didn't feel like there was a choice to me. Like these were mine.
Did you voice that? Were you like, these are mine now?
Yeah, I was like, that's literally what I said. I said, I guess they're mine now. Like, those are my goals. I took the journal, like I felt drawn to the journal. I picked it up. I ended up taking it. Like, these are my goals now. I do believe in that type of universe. Yeah. And so I said that and my housemates are like, you're crazy. I mean, they are four of the most supportive people I have ever known. And I am so lucky to live with them. So they weren't that like, if they had shunned me fully, I maybe would have, I don't know. I probably wouldn't have reconsidered, but they were like laughing. They thought it was an interesting concept. I have had no intention of having a coaching certificate, which is the number one thing on this list.
Right.
Several of these other goals, I was like, oh, I do some of this. 75 days weed free, 100 days alcohol free. I don't generally really drink very much. I can't really drink after 5 p.m. because it messes up my sleep. And most people want to drink with you after 5 p.m. So It's just not really something that's part of my life. 75 days weed free. I use cannabis for sleep and for other things, but I don't really, I'm not a heavy user. 100 meditations. At that point in the year, I had been meditating. One of my New Year's resolutions was to meditate every day. So I had already been meditating every day since January. So it had already been, I was like, oh, like this is easy. 85 workouts. I was like, surely I can do 85 workouts in the next 200 days. It was like, some of them seemed like not easy, but some of them seemed like, yeah, like, sure, I already do some of this.
But your running workouts did not count.
I decided my runs didn't count. Yeah, I made my life kind of hard in a number of these dimensions. And I also just had no idea what some of these meant. Like, what is creative creation time? I tried to Google it, didn't find anything. What is flourish creation time? Didn't find anything. I tried to gather information from the next few pages. So she does have some information on the next few pages.
Ah, okay.
So the next page has, in different color markers, it says workouts. And then it has like little hash marks as if you were tally marks. So it says workouts, alcohol-free, meditation, flourish time, and creative creation. She did not get very far. She had 5 workouts. She had 6 days alcohol-free. She had 3 meditations, 1 hour of flourish time, and 2 hours of creative creation.
Did you count those as part of yours, or you started from scratch?
No. Oh, that's an interesting. Well, you know what? That might be helpful. We're getting close now. But those on the podcast, I don't know if you know, but today is the 18th of September. So we are 3 days away
Oh my gosh.
from these goals being done. And it would definitely be helpful if her stuff counted towards mine. But that is not how I thought about it.
Okay.
Initially, maybe. The next page says the presence is the energy. In big letters, and there are some spelling errors in that. Then, which doesn't help me. The next page, again, helped me a little bit. So on May 4th, 2022, she made a TikTok called I Think I'm Afraid of Abundance.
Oh,
She made the Fairfield Way Making Healing a Habit outline, and she did her first meditation on deep physical discomfort. So then I started to think like, okay, maybe she's like some sort of more influencer person where making a TikTok is like the creative creation time. That's kind of what I was thinking. 3 days later, on May 7th, she said she returned to the Smith machine for her first leg day, and she revamped her arrangement of her apartment. That's it. That's the only information that I have when it comes to the goals. The next page says pleasure does not equal peace.
Oh.
And then the last page that she wrote in says, I'm the most me when I'm not thinking.
Oh,
Which
that's
is
very
very
improv.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very. Maybe she was an improviser too.
Maybe. And that's it. The rest is blank. Entirely blank. And so that was in February. And I was like slowly, this was in the back of my mind. I didn't really tell anyone besides my housemates. They knew I was kind of working on this. I was like doing things. I would record. I have the dates. I was like, oh, recorded on. I wrote it down. Like I logged on April 9th. I logged again on June 3rd. I would come and like log the hours that I had done. The very first thing I did, which I counted as 1 hour of creative flourish time, is I made a single page for each goal with little tiny squares that you can check off.
That seems much more organized.
It's just how I love checking things off. And also it's just like really fun little patterns of the squares. They are in rows. They're in sets. So like 10, let's say in a row, or 5 in a row, so that they're easy to count, but they're really nice. You can just do like little X's. And so this way, especially since I travel a lot, when I would come home, I would keep track of it on my phone. When I come home, I'd come back to the journal, which is heavy and big, and put the X's in. And I wasn't really thinking that much. And then I came home. I had a big series of trips, basically from March all the way through July. When I came back from July, and I sat down with a notebook and realized like, oh, crap.
We're getting close.
Yeah, there's like 50 days left. And so I have been working so hard on her goals now, just like every day trying to chip away at least some of them. And what Dana did not mention is that the reason this came up, or the reason we're having a conversation about improv in general, besides the fact that I love Dana and I was excited to talk to her,
yes,
is that the goal of 10 networking professional connections was really strange to me, because I sit in a very small niche field, as you heard, science-wise. There are people that I don't know or don't know as well as I could, but in general, I've been a faculty member for a long time now. I've been in this field for a long time, and there's not that many new networking professional connections. And I think more importantly, I've tried with most of her goals to be like, what would be important for me? Like, why would I want to do this?
Right.
And I'm like, I want to hear about people who have cool jobs. I want to hear Dana's path to like starting to pursue and putting, improv at the forefront of her work. So I decided that my networking professional connections would be more that. So I've talked to a play therapist. I've talked to a storytelling coach. And so I've kind of just instead used this as an excuse to like hear about people's journeys. But I do need 3 more, and we have 3 days left. So I might get a little bit more lenient on the rules.
What does today count as? Does today's episode recording count as anything?
I would say yes, correct. This counts as creative creation time.
Okay.
I would say we are creating something and it feels creative. And in general, like I don't count. So I would count our improv shows as creative creation time. And then I counted our improv practice as creative flourish time.
Okay.
I ended up defining these two. I am done with my creative flourish hours. Seems I do a lot more creative flourishing than creative creation. based on the definitions I gave them.
Yeah, what were those?
Creative flourish to me is something that's creative that's meant to serve you and who you are and your life. So, let's say that you're having a really stressful day and you just need a little break for like 30 minutes, 60 minutes to like draw, not with the purpose of drawing something or making something to give to someone, but you just want to scratch at that paper and feel the motion of drawing, or you want to like dance it out in your room to specific songs. That would be flourish time. So sometimes improv practice would count. Often improv practice counts like if it was in that space, but it's not creating something inherently. Whereas the creative creation time for me has meant like actually creating something. So I sewed a flag there's a street poet in San Francisco who I adore and love his work and am close friends with now. And I made him a flag that says poems. And that was 4 hours of creative creation time. I handmade a baby mobile for my friend whose baby just arrived in August. And it's all these intricate, tiny paper hot air balloons. That counts as creative creation time. Things where you're creating something. And it could be a performance, so like a show. But I've gotten more lenient on like what this means. So like last weekend, I went to the Reno Hot Air Balloon Festival because I love hot air balloons. It's a more recent obsession. And I went by myself, and the first day I was walking around and there was a pilot that I had seen at a different festival. And I went up to talk to her and she said that I could crew for her the next day, which was
that's so cool.
So exciting and amazing. So I helped crew at the Reno Hot Air Balloon Festival for Good Karma.
What does it mean to crew? Like, what did you have to do?
Yeah. So it's like unrolling the balloon, and like it needs all these people to hold the different ropes and get everything in place. And then during glow shows, so hot air balloon festivals have glow shows, which is like, so hot air balloon festivals are all, let me back up a second. Hot air balloon festivals are all at ungodly early hours, like really early. They start around like 4 or 5 in the morning. They often start with a glow show, which is where the balloons are upright and they're adding hot air to them. So they're using the fire. But because it's 5 in the morning, they glow and they'll do it to music.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's really cool. Or it's really hot because you're doing it for the light of the music. But depending on the song, you're adding hot air every time you do that. And so keeping the balloon on the ground is actually a task for the crew.
Yeah. You're like holding it. Yeah.
Yeah. You can be, or you're like putting your weight on it so that it stays down, because it's not just like an ambient, like it's not just like a flame for flame's sake. It's doing something. So I think in the past, like, it's starting in February, March, April, May. I don't know that I would have counted that, but because it was a show, I counted the hour of the glow show as creative creation because there were thousands of attendees watching the show.
Sure.
But, that's not why I did it. And if you had asked me, like, which of these categories, I would easily say this is creative flourish. Like, this is me doing this for me, enjoying my life and like feeling connected to what brings me joy. So I have been a little bit lax in recent times for those because I am getting very close and I do have a lot, not a ton, but a lot of things left to complete.
Yeah. So we're 3 days away from the deadline. What do you have left to complete? Are you?
Yeah. So I am now a certified coach. I do not intend to coach anybody, but I did get a coaching certificate.
Certified in what?
I got a relationship and sex coaching certificate from an online website. It was just like a 6-week class. It was the cheapest, shortest, easiest coaching certificate in a topic that I found interesting.
Did you learn anything cool from that?
The business side of it was really interesting. It was like, the relationship side, like less so, but the coaching, the actual coaching, a little bit less so. I was interested in it because I identify as polyamorous and relationships are a big part of my life, and understanding and showing up for all of our relationships, from our neighbors and friends all the way up to, life partners or nesting partners or other people that you live with is important to me. So that part, it was interesting, but really just very basic. And I'm sure a real relationship coaching certificate might have more interesting there. But the business side, like I didn't know how you incorporate different companies. I didn't know anything about the coaching, the business structure, what legal status you choose and all of that, or how you calculate your fees, your hourly fees. I don't know. That was, I guess, interesting. So I already completed that. I have not completed the 85 workouts because I don't count my runs.
How many do you have left?
How many do I have? That's a great question. Let's look. I have 17 workouts left. And so in recent days, I've gotten pretty lax on what that means. So if I do like a 10-minute ab set earlier in the day, and then later in the day, I do, a leg body weight workout, I count those as two separate workouts. So yeah, I think that that's actually more attainable than it seems, because if I do those short workouts.
Okay. Yeah. Short bursts.
I still have how many hours of creative creation time left? 29 hours of creative creation time left, 2 hours of which are used right now.
Right now.
So that would be great.
Exactly. So that counts.
Right now we're doing them. And I can do a good probably 6 or 7 hours tonight. So I think I should be able to get there. I still have one more initiated social occasions left. So this is an interesting one I have two more. I have one that's planned, actually scheduled for tomorrow. When I saw that 10 initiated social occasions, I think what she probably meant was like asking someone to coffee. Like you're the one that initiates with your friends. The thing is that I am fairly extroverted, and I do this a lot, especially because I'm traveling a lot. So people don't always know when I'm here. And so I pick up a lot of that organizational slack for my friendships and other relationships. So when I found this, I decided that initiated social occasion had to be like a real occasion. It had to be like I organized a party or I organized a group of people to do something. Initially, I had said it had to be more than 10 people, but I have become much more lax at that. And so I have done 8 of them. I have one more that's planned for tomorrow. And then my current plan is that I am going to host a Let's Complete the Goals party on Thursday, 21st, where we come together and we just try to finish all of the goals possible.
Oh my God. So there'll be workouts, there'll be drawing and painting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's going to be, in fact, on the airplane, I was on a plane last night and I didn't have a lot of my creative creation stuff with me. So I spent an hour making a flyer in the notebook for tomorrow for the Come Help Me as I finish the Journal of Goals flyer, a hand-drawn flyer that I will take pictures of and send to my friends. So yeah, the goal, and it says workouts, creative creation, networking, and so many songs. I have so many song recordings left. It is ridiculous. So yeah, I have 2 more events, but I have plans for those. And the bigger issue is that I have 19 songs left to record.
Yeah, the songs recording one's interesting. I wonder if she's a singer and wanted to record her own stuff, or I wonder.
It's not clear. And she's very clear. She says 20 recordings of a song. So in August, I was like, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll just audio record me singing happy birthday to 20 of my friends, because that's a song.
Yeah.
And then, who have birthdays between now and September, and I'll send them happy birthday songs. But then I didn't do it because it felt like a cop out. And now it's way too close. I did make one song. So what I did, hopefully my cousin doesn't find this podcast until I give him this. His babies, he has twins. They sing in their sleep.
Oh,
it's very cute. They're 3 months old now, but they've been doing this since they were infants. And they sent me a video of it. And I remixed one into a song. It took me many hours of creative creation time. And my goal ideally is to at least make like a few more of those, because his 40th birthday is this fall. So that then I can send him like these cute, weird, but not that good songs. Because I'm not a musical. I played cello for many years, but I'm like, I don't identify as a musical person. And I just don't, it's not like, I don't do musical improv. I just like, it's very far outside of my comfort zone. But yeah, I spent like a number of hours with someone who is really musically inclined, using GarageBand and like remixing my cousin's singing Baby to be a song. So I don't know, but I think that on Thursday, we're going to be doing a lot of song recording. I mean, it might just be like us, like, improv, where each person is like, starts a repetitive phrase and then they all link together until we have a song and I record it. Like that might be what happens on Thursday. And that is fine. As long as we get through it.
Could you do karaoke at your party? There'd be lots of karaoke.
Oh, another creative solution.
Did you sing karaoke at camp?
I didn't, no. I have also started writing. This is really interesting, is that I went to a storytelling workshop for Creative Flourish Time, but also because I just wanted to. And I ended up being coaxed on stage to tell this story about finding this journal. I hadn't even really thought about it. And then she asked a question in the workshop of like, what are you trying? The theme was summer. And it was like, what are you trying to accomplish by the end of the summer? And this is this
Oh.
amazing storytelling coach in the Bay named Liz Morrison. And she, in the little group, I told them, like, actually, I have this journal. I'm like trying to finish this other lady's goals. And they were like, you have to tell that story on stage. So I told it on stage and it got recorded and it's on YouTube. And what's really interesting since then is that I have been more open about these goals and I have like shared it with other people. And so other people have stepped up to try to help me and find creative solutions or to encourage me. And so one of the things, though, is that when I finished that story later that evening, a number of the audience members said, like, you have to write a book about this. And I have had people say that about a number of different things in my life. And I've always been like, there's just such an internal, immediate no. And there was not an immediate yes on this. There was definitely not an immediate yes on this, but there was like an internal, like not neutral. And so one of the things I've been doing with my creative creation time is in the journal itself, I have been now writing about the goals. And this is the most absurd thing to me is that, so I started writing it. I realized that I was writing it to her. I was like writing it almost like a letter to her.
Yeah.
And I've been writing in it at the frequency and in the way that I'm like, oh, I'm journaling. I did it. I am journaling for the first time in my entire life.
You are a journaler now.
And I wrote down on the plane recently, actually, a number of the themes or things that have come up with this. And one of them is that often goals beget more goals, both in that they like teach us what it is that we want to accomplish, but also that sometimes you just accomplish totally other things that maybe were underlying reasons that you wanted those goals in the first place. And also this kind of like layering of goals that when we are working towards something where its synergy is more than the parts. So if you just saw each of these goals as their separate thing, it's not as satisfying. Like we both, Dana and I, lit up when we were like, oh yeah, like an event where we're doing the goals and we're doing all of those things. And when you see that as like this beautiful creative thing that encompasses the things you want to accomplish or the person you want to be, goals are ultimately super personal in that they are us stepping back and looking at like, how do I want to live my life? I don't have that much time on this world. Like, what is it that I want to do or be or feel? How do I want to interact with the people around me or my world? Or how do I ultimately want to spend this time that I have? And so while goals are incredibly personal in that way, I would never be able to achieve this without community. Like goals are both incredibly personal and also super communal. Even when we think we have the most individual goals possible, our friends and our family and other people, just by virtue of being in our lives, are along for those shifts and changes and goals. When we do different things, we grow or we change slightly or we start to see something in a different perspective, or they actually join us in our goals, or maybe they see us and they get inspired to do whatever it is. And so different people, like some people in networks of mine that are like, not even, they're people that I just met and they're like, I'll work out with you. I'll text you every hour on the hour. We'll do 10 push-ups until we've done 100. Or, you know, like I'm a singer-songwriter. I'll meet with you and we can brainstorm, you know, what you should do about that. And people get excited, I think at its core, because we all have things we want to strive for. And we want to be excited about things that other people are excited for and see the version of them that they want to be and help them get there. I also think, which is something I've written out a number of times in this journal, is that our ability to achieve our goals is entirely arbitrary. It's like entirely self-determined and arbitrary and depends a lot on how we write our goals and what we decide to count. And that it takes that time to step back and be like, well, wait, why was I doing this goal in the first place? Which I can't ask, right? I don't know why I'm doing, I mean, I know why I'm doing the goal. And I've been able to ask myself, like, what is important for me in achieving this particular goal, whatever that goal might be. So like doing the relationship coaching versus some other type of coaching certificate. You know, why is that important to me? Or the new save influx $5,000 seems like a really basic goal. It's like not really anything notable, but I've spent a long time trying to like figure out like where would it feel good to put money in our society if I was going to say, and ended up finding this company in New York that basically buys large scale art pieces and then turns them into LLCs. And then you can buy portions of the art and then you can't get your money back until they sell the art or unless you sell your share of that company, which is actually a famous painting. And that's where I ended up saving $5,000. I put all 5,000 into this company called Masterworks. And so like these goals, if they're good goals, or if we approach them the right way, goals push us to seek out what's important to us, or like, why would this be valuable for us? Or why am I doing this? And there's the satisfaction. I know that satisfaction so well. The satisfaction of just like checking that shit off and being done with it and being like, yes, I accomplished something. I accomplished this thing and it's great. But that's not why we like goals, I don't think. We like goals because of what they actually represent and that's arbitrary, whether we achieve them or not. So like how that fits into our larger purpose. And so some of my creative time now where I'm like, oh, you know what? In the past, I wasn't counting it. Like what counts? What doesn't count? And it's like, well, it counts if it's serving the purpose, which is for me to have spaces to be more creative or to be making something and offering for the world that connects me to other people. Or, why would the creation part matter of creative creation? So that's some of the things that I've been mulling over. I also find it really fascinating that like people make goals in all different ways. And I would have never written these goals this way.
Would you have done it more smart goals-esque kind of thing? Or how would you have written them?
Yeah, I am trained, I think, academically to write SMART goals. So that's the like, measurable, attainable, realistic, etc. I'm trained at that. I think her goals actually in many ways do fit some of those things. They don't have any of the sub goals that help you figure out how
time-based.
Yeah, they're time-based. They don't have any of the like, there's no path. She doesn't show you how she's going to get from A to B. Like it's not very clear. And the other thing is like, I don't know how realistic they are. I can tell you that when I set goals for myself, I sometimes feel like, yeah, those were super reasonable. And then when I don't achieve them, I'm like annoyed. Sometimes I'm really hard on myself. Like, oh, this is my fault. And I didn't spend enough time on this, or I like didn't X, Y, Z. With her goals, since they're not my goals, I'm like, who the hell were you to be making this ridiculous goal? This was not realistic. And we would never say that to ourselves. Like there was a journal entry that I wrote to her where I was angry. I was like, these are unrealistic, way too much for 140 something days or whatever she wrote. That's so much to expect of yourself. And then I immediately like looked at myself and was like, yeah, like we do this to ourselves all the time. We set goals for ourselves all the time that are really challenging. And then we feel bad and we shame ourselves when we haven't accomplished them. But when it's someone else's goals imposed on us, we don't see that. And that's what I've been writing this like book about is like, there's all these layers that you don't think about. But in terms of her writing of her goals, something that's very concrete that I would definitely have never written this way. She obviously wanted more creative time in her life. I would never have written that as hours. I don't know what I would have written it as, but maybe because of my job or other things, I'm a very product oriented person. So I might have written it as like 20 creative projects complete, right? I'm very good at starting creative projects and not finishing them. So, but the hours actually release me of a number of really important things. And like, it's really actually beautiful that she did it this way because like these tiny paper hot air balloons I made for this baby mobile were honestly exhausting. And each one took 2 hours to make. If I were my normal self, I am my normal, I'm still me. But if I were, trying to achieve my own goals, I would have been so like frustrated and angry that they were taking so long. But because I'm trying to get creative hours, I was like, yeah, each of these takes 2 hours. This is great. Like these take forever to accomplish. And so it kind of creates a situation where I actually am incentivized for like just sitting in the moment and being long-winded with things. And that's something that like, I would have never written my goal that way. And she wrote her goal that way. And whether she did that intentionally or not, it's serving that purpose for me.
And if you counted it more as completed projects, that whole project would have just counted as one thing, even though it took you 20 hours or whatever to do. And then you would have been frustrated, like all that work only counted for one thing. I still have 19 more completed projects to do. But now you've added now 20 hours to your bucket of hours. Yeah, that is so
and I think that's one of the that's one of the things where we just don't think about that for our own goals. And it's not that like, her goal is not a smart goal. It is a smart goal. It's just a totally different type of goal than I would have written. And it has tremendous impacts on how I approach how I feel about what I'm doing. And that's pretty beautiful in and of itself. Like accomplishing her goals has taught me a lot, both about myself, about maybe her, I don't know, about goals. And I don't know what I was supposed to accomplish by doing this. Like, I don't know why the universe gave me this, but I do feel really grateful that the universe dropped this series of goals in my lap because I've learned a lot.
Have you thought about telling her that you're doing this project?
I get this question. It's so funny. I get this question every single time I tell this story. Yeah. When I told it on stage, someone asked, and my response is always the same. My immediate reaction to that is like, are you kidding me? Like, I would feel like such an asshole because like think about if I were her, if I wrote a series of goals, like my most intense goals of what I really wanted to accomplish. And then I didn't, apparently, according to this journal, make very much progress on them. And then I give away the journal and some other random lady takes my journal and completes my goals and then rubs it in my face. I would feel so absurd. I don't even know how I would feel. I mean, it's just like so hard to even know how I would feel about that.
But I don't think of it as rubbing it in the face, though. How cool is it that these goals that I like wrote down and didn't accomplish, but they've like changed your life for the past year. They've changed your life for the better.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that's rubbing it in. I feel like that's awesome.
Well, I've also told myself like maybe it wasn't even her journal. Like she was giving it away, but maybe it was just like a roommate's journal.
Yeah, like what if she got the journal and is giving it away to somebody else's goal, but you've been like having her face as the person. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know her name. I met her. I have her, Facebook Messenger. I can like message her if I wanted. I do think like if I do continue and I write a book about it, I will reach out to her. And I think I'd like to make sure that she feels okay about it. And I would let her probably read it first. But for the moment, I have it because I just feel like I feel this weird, like it's very hard to imagine what that would feel like if someone was like, hey, remember this diary?
I get it.
I remember all those goals you set? I did them.
That's very vulnerable.
It's not something you'd ever expect.
Yeah, because it could result in, I don't know, there's been a lure of mystery a little bit because you just don't know what was going through her mind and her headspace. It'd be cool to know later, but I don't know. This is cool that you've taken this on because she could be like, oh, I just wrote this down as like a willy-nilly thing. I didn't really think much of it. But in your mind, I don't know, is the story, it's okay, she wrote these down to create this stuff and create more connection and create creation time in her life. And let's keep it at that story. I like that narrative.
I think similarly, you had offered a few times for us to do this podcast recording. And part of the reason I want it before is like, and this is also for if I'm writing a book, I haven't made this decision, but like, I don't know. We're 4 days out. I'm someone who finishes things like ahead of time. I have no concept of whether I'm going to finish her goals. And I don't know if it matters. And I think it might be okay for people to not know if they ever get done, because that's ultimately probably not what I've learned from this.
Well, you just said that goals are arbitrary, right? It's more of like what you get out of it, and you've gotten a whole lot out of it, and some goals haven't been completed yet. So that's really big food for thought too.
Yeah. I think, it's like, I'm not sure. There's only so many hours between now and midnight on the 21st, and we'll see if I get these things done with my normal job and all of the other things that I do in my life. But I've written a few times to myself of like, how are you going to feel if you don't finish these? And I don't have an answer. I don't really fully know. I think I'll feel really mixed. I mean, there's like the optimistic side of me hopes that I'm going to feel great. Like, look at what you have accomplished. Look at all of these different hours. When I log my hours, I do keep track of like what I did. So it's like, I can see, how many improv shows that I've done. And I can see how many days I started swimming again because of this. Because I'm like, well, that counts as a workout. So I started swimming again and I picked up hula hooping. I started hula hooping 45 minutes a day for like a period of a few weeks.
Amazing.
There's like all these things that I can read and see that I've done of like, oh, right. I like wrote some logic puzzles. I laser cut a spice rack for my cousin. I like painted a seashell at improv summer camp, which then ended up getting an award
That's
from the art
right.
director. And I did that because I like needed some time away and also just wanted to like, I was like, oh, I better log some creative creation hours while I'm here. And there are these amazing things that have happened. And so like I hope in my like purest heart that if I don't finish the goals, that I will still feel really good. And I think maybe that's the important intention to go into it. But I could just feel like really sad or like, oh, like there's a tiny piece of me that's like, well, you procrastinated. Like you had 200 and something days. Like if you had even just done one workout, every other day, whatever it is, I think the narratives we tell ourselves are always like that. There are pieces of us that do that. And there's got to be space for those pieces too of like, yeah, I see you. Like it's true. And that's okay. My hope is that even if I don't finish, I will still feel satisfied. But I guess we'll find out.
I know it's easier to say on the outside looking in, but just judging by how excited you were telling the story and all the lessons learned that like goals beget more goals and layering of goals and like how it creates more connection and community, like all these lessons learned, I feel like, yeah, you might have some mixed feelings of like procrastination, but if you don't, and you've still got time, but if you don't finish them, I think there's still cause for celebration, regardless of the outcome of goals achieved and accomplished and completed. And I gotta ask, the deadline's in 3 to 4 days. What's next? What's after this?
I mean, I think I've also asked myself that at other times of like, well, what's my personality if I'm just taking on this other person's like personality? If goals are sometimes I've gotten some pretty philosophical like moments with this of like,
Yeah.
well, if goals are like who we strive to be or do or like how we spend our time, the quintessential like question of life, then like by taking on someone else's goals, like who am I? Am I just this person trying on other people's lives? But I do think like there are pieces of this I would love to keep doing. And some of these goals I blew past because like I wasn't going to start meditating twice a day and count. So I have continued to meditate every day since January. And that goal disappeared like, I wasn't even thinking. Or like the alcohol-free days and the weed-free days, like they're gone. And like those aren't going to change. And that probably didn't impact my life that much. But these like stretch goals, and then some of the people that I've met or connected with because of them, like, of course, I'm going to keep spending time with them or hopefully doing creative things with them. She has taught me, or the goals have taught me that there was a lack of that intentional time for creativity in my life, even as an improver. With my busy life and my schedule, like, and there's a lot of creativity that goes into grant writing, but there's not that much creativity. And there's some creativity that goes into like designing research studies. But writing academic papers is like very structured.
Yeah.
And, teaching can be very structured, especially the way that I have done it over the last year because it's been remote. And I think that was missing some of that creative time. And I think the other big thing that I'm taking with me is like the creative creation time can't happen without creative flourish time. If you're stretched and you're not resourced and you don't have space where you're like rushing and you're barely eating, whatever it is, you're like picking up your kids, you're running back and forth to the airport, you're flying back and forth across the country like I do, then you need that time that's creative time that's just for like you, that's like nonsense where don't have some pressure that you're making something, you're just like doing it for your own flourishing in order to have enough space to be creative and create something. Creativity doesn't live in this like stretched space. It has to kind of have time carved out for it. And so I don't know if the hours was intentional for that, but I definitely would like to keep some of that practice or a lot of that practice moving forward. And it'd be sweet if I could keep journaling, although I have little faith that given past evidence, I will probably not keep journaling once I'm done writing about this story. But maybe.
It sounds like the journaling is helping you to write this story. So maybe if you frame it as I'm writing this story and also habit stacking. I mean, habit stacking. You could meditate and then that leads to journal time after. I mean, there are
Yes,
options.
absolutely.
I wanted to offer that, you said that you question philosophically, like, I've taken on this person's goals, like, who am I? Like, what do I really want? But you made the goals fit your lifestyle and yourself. So, yes, the coaching thing you wouldn't have really pursued normally, but you made the like flourish and creation time yours. How she probably thought of her creation time as being probably more TikTok-y, maybe influencer stuff that she was trying to do. You made them like cutting out air balloons for your friend's baby stroller. You made it yours. While she designed the goals and you followed them, you ultimately made it yours too.
Yeah. I do have this interesting concept. I don't know if I will do this. I want to see other people's take on accomplishing her goals. I want to see what they can do if they do her goals. What I have been calling actually our goals is how I've been writing about them
I like that. Our goals. Yeah.
because they're not really hers. They're not yours anymore, like as in hers when I write about it, but they're ours. They're our goals. And I'm working through them for her and me.
Well,
Yeah.
if you are listening to this episode now, we'll give Jana's contact ways to reach out in a minute. Reach out and tell her if you would read a book like this, because I know I would. I would totally read. This is such a cool story with a cool, compelling idea. I know you don't have an immediate yes or an immediate no, but Jana, you got to write this in some way, shape, or form. Like, this has got to keep going. It is such a cool story.
Thank you. Yeah, I would have never known it. I just didn't even think anything of it, right? Maybe a little bit back to what we were talking about. Like sometimes you look backwards and you're like, yeah, right. That makes sense. But in the moment, it doesn't always look that way. Or the way that improv ends up showing up in my life. Or I went to yearbook camp. I was like really big on yearbook, and the way that like layout and design from yearbook
Oh
camp
my
and stuff
gosh.
shows up in my life. Like I think you don't ever know where pieces fit into your life. And hopefully someday when I'm in my like 90s or even older, I'll look back and it'll look like it makes sense. But I don't think it has to make sense in the moment.
No, I agree. And that's a very comforting thought because we try so hard to make it make sense. Like, why did this journal fall into my lap? And why am I doing this? I could have ripped out the pages and started my own journal, but I chose to keep it. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
make sense. You're just following a gut feeling. And that gut feeling is leading to something you couldn't have even imagined at the end of it.
Yeah. It's truly, the improv tenets, the trust and saying yes. And also like owning and touching base with yourself to figure out how you want to show up in that specific space. And it's been great. Highly recommend taking on other people's goals.
Or take on these goals here and see what comes up for
Yeah.
you.
It has really been interesting to see like what sort of types of creativity I'm drawn to and
Yeah.
what fills me up and what drains me. And, whether it's visual or movement or, music, or there's lots of different ways for you to add creative time into your life. And some of them will feel more natural to you than others.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jana, I end the podcast asking everyone, how do they embody a yes and mindset? I mean, you've absolutely answered that, as in you yes anded this person's goals and took them on. Anything you're trying to yes and afterwards, or you're going to see what comes up.
Yeah. And maybe this is not the answer that most people give, but I have been doing a lot of internal work lately on yes anding those like uncomfortable experiences or feelings that you're having. So if you're feeling resistance or there's like an angry part of you, of like kind of doing a visualization exercise of like showing up for that part and being like, yeah, let's be, not actually like, you don't need to act on that or be in whatever space about that, but like giving amplification and space and respect for all of the different complicated things, whether it could even be a no. So giving like a real, true yes and for your internal no. That's what I have been working a lot on recently.
Yeah. I like that you were like viscerally angry at this girl, this person who wrote these goals and like you journaled about it and you released that. That's really cool.
And by doing that, I was able to see like, right, we do this to ourselves all the time. I would never have been angry at myself for the goal. Like I wouldn't have seen the goals as unreasonable. I would have been angry at myself for not achieving them. So,
Part of me is like, well, I should take on the full list. If I'm going to take on these goals, I should take on the full. But I guess, as you were saying, it's all arbitrary what we choose to do.
yeah, it is. Well, what you could do is wait until 142 days away from next September.
Right.
The truest, if we want to create a ritual and a real, true, systematic yearly cycle of this, is that 142 days from September 21st every year, you could embark on these particular goals and try again.
Oh, because I do like the creation and flourishing time. That's really interesting. I don't know. I'm into it. Let's do it. You could open that 142 days.
If you took it on every year and you saved $5,000 every year, I mean, that's a lot.
It would be. Jana, this has been amazing. Thank you for sharing this story. Thanks for sharing about your public health journey, your improv journey, I've been calling it mysterious notebook of creativity, mysterious notebook of goals story. It's so fun. I don't know. There's more to this. And I love that we're recording this before the deadlines. That way we can look back on this episode and see the outcomes and aftermath that happens later on. That's cool.
Yeah, I really appreciate the time, both because it's creative creation time.
2 hours of creative creation time.
It's true. 2 full hours of creative creation time. And also because I think it's been really nice. I was really secretive about these goals for a long time, and it's been really nice to share. Maybe because I had some shame, or because I was worried that if I told people, then I'd be accountable to completing them. Although I'm someone who's really internally accountable to completing the things that I decide. But I've been really happy to share it. And this has been great to be able to talk through it with you, and also to riff on even more ideas of what we could do and move forward with this.
I don't know. There's so much to this. This is cool. What a wild thing. And Jana, I know that our listeners are listening and want to contact you about this episode and about the book you're writing, because you're going to write it. It's going to be fantastic. And they just want to chat with you and learn more about it and learn the outcome, because we don't know the outcome yet when we're recording. Where can our listeners find out more about you or contact you?
Yeah, thanks, Dana. I do keep a lot of my personal and my professional life separate from this. So I have set up an email account in advance of this podcast. So you can reach out at yourgoaljournal@gmail.com, spelled yourgoaljournal@gmail.com. And I would be excited to hear your reactions, and if you want to undertake these goals, to hear what's going on, and or also reflections you have about goals you've set in your life, or ways that this has helped you to think differently about goals in general, or how you orient towards them.
Yes, I love it. Reach out. Please encourage Jana to write the book. We were just chatting about how could the book could be set up as, of course, the narrative of how it went, but then at the end, it could have a space for you to track your goals and follow these goals and make them your own. There's so many cool ideas, and it's just, let's say yes and do all this stuff. It'll be so fun. And I'll add to check out Jana's show. She performs every Saturday at Endgames Improv when she's in town. Of course, with your fucked up relationship, which with that title, how could you not go to that show? So much good tea and drama there, I'm sure. So many good stories. I say good lightly. So many stories to improvise off of.
Yeah, come see us. Or the Friday show is great as well. Endgames has a whole lineup. And if you come to any show on a given night, you can stay for all the other unsold out shows for free. So come be the number one audience member.
I was just in the San Francisco area and I didn't get to check out Endgames yet, but I did go do a little drop-in class at Leela Improv, and it was super fun. So I hope to be in the Bay Area again and check it out. And I'll definitely reach out to you too when I'm up there again.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you. This has been great. Thanks, Dana.
So much fun. Jana, so grateful. And I can't wait to see you again, give you a big hug, and hopefully see you whenever our paths cross again at Improv or otherwise.
Yeah, thanks.
And thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Oh my gosh, I love this story about the mysterious notebook of creativity and goals. I love that Jana did this. I love that she came on the podcast to talk about it. I love that she shared this with me so that I could invite her on the podcast to talk about it. How special was this episode? And I know this is a long episode. There's a lot to unpack here. And I know you can do some unpacking yourself. You probably already have some revelations and things you're thinking about. We did record this episode in September 2023, right when the deadline for the goals was up, like 2 or 3 days before the goals deadline. I know this episode is coming out in 2024, a few months later. So I did reach out to Jana to get an update on if she finished her goals or not. And her answer was that she decided that she thinks it's best not to tell folks if she finished or not. And I know we're all a little disappointed to hear that. I will say I certainly am, because I'm very invested in this story now. I think it is the coolest story of just finding a notebook. It's like serendipity a little bit, it's happenstance, it's I don't know. Timing is everything, and there's a reason why she got this notebook and chose to take on these goals. So, I am certainly disappointed that I don't know if she finished or not. I know that she's really goal oriented, so there's a high chance that she might have, but also there's a high chance that she was like, "Hey, I've already learned a ton by doing this. Missing a few of these goals right at the end does not take away from the experience." So, we won't know, we won't ever know the answer to that question, did the goals get achieved or not? But I think at the end of it, that outcome doesn't matter. All of the things that she shared in this episode of just everything she got out of doing these goals and what she learned about herself and what she took away from this whole experiment here is just way more important than any like check the box kind of thing. So, I think that just adds to the mysteriousness of this whole notebook thing. I really hope she continues to talk about the story and her experience from it. What yes and whatever comes up from it. And so maybe she'll share later on if she met the goals deadline, maybe not. And again, I just think it's the coolest thing that she did this experiment. I did ask her why she didn't want to share, just because, again, there was some disappointment. I'm not trying to be nosy, although I am probably a nosy person, but we're just like, what's the reasoning behind not wanting to share? And she said that she is not sure that it's the important part of the story or experience. So I responded that I can respect that, and I can. And I love that response. It's very noble of her to respond that way because, listen, if I achieved all these goals and I did this whole thing, I'd probably be talking about it a ton and probably too much. She gets to know in her heart if she achieved it or not. And also, she's right. It isn't the most important part of this experience. Again, I know there's a lot in this episode. We talked a lot about these specific goals and this whole mysterious notebook of creativity. And, this episode is coming out in early 2024 when you may be thinking about some goals you have for the new year or the future, or whenever you're listening to this, really. My main takeaway from this is just that Jana found something that she really enjoyed doing, and she had a lot of discoveries come out of doing this experiment and experience. And so I want to ask you, what's something creative that you enjoy or that you have discovered that you enjoyed? Maybe it wasn't super clear at first, and then it kind of came to you, but I think there's a lot of discoveries that can be made when we put ourselves out there and try new things. So either one, what's something that you've tried and discovered that you enjoy it, or what is something that you want to try in 2024 and just see what comes up and make your own discoveries from that experience. Very simple question today. There's so much good stuff in this episode. Jana's the best. I'm so grateful for her coming on and sharing this experience. I hope that there's more to come from this. I really, really do. Reach out to her and let her know that you enjoyed this story and you want to try it too. I did ask Jana as well in my follow-up questions to her if she was going to do these goals again in 2024 or a version of these goals. And being the mysterious, fun person that Jana is, they said it does have me thinking a lot about New Year's resolutions. So, again, we don't know what that means. No definitive answer there, and that's okay. I loved this episode, and I'd love to hear from you. Let me know if anything came up, or let me know if you would do the same thing. Like, if this notebook happened into your life and you discovered that there were goals written on it, would you have done the same thing? How would you have handled that? I have a feeling that wouldn't have done the goals. I probably would have ripped out the pages, but I love that Jana said yes and to these goals that were not hers and made some crazy awesome discoveries from this whole experience. How cool. Let me know if you had any discoveries from this episode. You can reach out to me at dana@improvispeaking.com. That's DAYNA at improvispeaking.com. Or you can message me on Instagram at improvispeaking or on LinkedIn at Dana Gowan. And you can find out more about my services and offerings on my website at improvispeaking.com. What a fun experience this was today. I hope your 2024 and beyond, whatever year you're listening to this in, I hope your year is full of creativity and fun and joy and discoveries that come up from trying new things and doing what lights you up. It's always fun to discover what comes from trying new things, and I hope you make all the cool discoveries this year. Thank you so, so much for listening and supporting Improvly Speaking. Go out and flex your creative thinking. I'll talk to you next time.